Hi, it's Andrew from Acuity Auto Redact. Welcome to the Data Protection Weekly podcast, where we wrap up all the biggest issues affecting data protection professionals in the UK each week. So I thought we might spend a bit of time today discussing data protection impact assessments in 2026. Now, a lot of data protection professionals will be saying, Andrew, why are you bringing this up now? Data protection impact assessments have been around since the birth of GDPR. There isn't anything new in terms of laws for 2026 that affect them, so why bring them up now? Well, it's not so much that there's new laws that are around, but we need to consider the new technological landscape, the growth of AI, and as a result of that, a lot of people and organisations experimenting with new and innovative ways of data processing. Now, for those of you who haven't done a data protection impact assessment before, they are required when processing anything that could be judged as high risk. So where there's a risk that the processing or if the exposure of the data could cause significant risk to an individual. And that's quite a broad and subjective category. The ICO gives some fantastic guidelines on when to use it and when not to, but organisations typically have different thresholds. And lots of organisations, when they start to use third-party apps, will see things that if it went wrong or if the data was processed incorrectly, or even if the processing is done to the letter of the law, that has the potential to cause a risk to an individual. So it's really important these are gotten right. And with the change in technology in recent years and the growth of AI, it's something to consider. So here are my 5 top tips for doing a DPIA in 2026. So the first thing is, a lot of people do a data protection impact assessment at the end of a process. They might have procured some software, they may have found something that solves a problem, and then gone, oh, we need to do a data protection impact assessment. I would strongly recommend looking at this part of your procurement phase itself, if it isn't already. Look at the organisation and ask them for a clear data processing agreement. The more reputable companies will have this on their website or maybe the trial version of their application. I know that's something we do at Acuity. We make sure it's very prominent both on our website and our app so that people can see it. But it's really important that you have a copy of it and that you get to know how the company processes data. They may have the coolest features that you need. They may solve the business case that you've put forward exactly. But again, if they're lax on things like being able to encrypt data at rest and in transit, if they're storing data in multiple data centers throughout the world and they can't give a very clear picture of where that data is stored, it's a no-no. It should be part of your procurement decision, not an afterthought. The second thing to look at is to get a map of how the data flows. Don't just rely on what the vendor says in its marketing. Really get to know the application, particularly if you've got someone in IT who can spend maybe an hour or so doing this, and get them to really audit how the data is sent. Hitting F12 on the keyboard and looking at where it's making, API connection requests to, data connection requests to, can really help to pin things down. You need to look at the policies, where they say the data's held, where the application is actually phoning home to. Sometimes pressing F12, clicking on network, you can see the connections it's making. It maybe is saving data to a slightly suspect location that you need to check out with the vendor. And that's part of your due diligence, is making sure that the data that is being stored is being done in a way that is compliant with the UK GDPR. So you need to really audit what they say they do, but also do a bit of digging. See if you can find something that maybe contradicts the policy, because what you sometimes will find is that the policy was written by the company 2 years ago. A developer started using a data center maybe in a country that doesn't process its data as ethically as we would like, or in a way that is GDPR compliant, or there isn't a safe data bridging agreement between the UK and that country, and nobody really documented it. So a little bit of due diligence can help a little bit too. The next thing, my third top tip, is to scrutinize any use of AI and analytics. Now, this is the biggie. There is an absolute arms race among companies to put AI into products and also to analyze user behavior so that they can make the product better. Completely makes sense. AI is the new hot thing that everybody wants to include, and some uses are really amazingly useful and innovative, and some just feel like a bolt on because someone said we need more AI in this product. That means that some companies, certainly not all, but there will be some companies that are processing data through AI data centers owned by Google, OpenAI, Microsoft, different data centers in ways that their original application didn't. And that can be done safely. At Acuity, we take every precaution to use Google Enterprise's AI in order to make sure that we can actually audit the exact data center that we're making Vertex AI calls in, so we can say, yes, that is being processed in the data center in London. We can see that data. We know it's being done there. But talking around and to other companies and people who I do know that not every company is auditing where they're spinning up new AI services and where these are being processed. So if you see that there's AI in the product, ask the company, well, where is this data stored? Where is this data processed? Do you have an agreement with that AI company that you will not use the data, or they will not use the data to train their models? Are you using their enterprise version of the AI? Is the data for that AI being ran in particular data centers, or is it a free-for-all for which data center is carrying out the AI activity? It's the same with analytics as well. You need to really scrutinize if the application uses analytics of what service is being used, what data is being collected, and where it's being stored, and whether that will be used for any marketing information. There's lots of companies whose entire business model is providing analytics tools that can be baked into applications. If that is baked in, they may be also using that data themselves in order to create a marketing campaign or to sell the data and package it up. So it's something that you need to look for. And if the AI feature and the analytics feature isn't going to benefit you, you might just say, could this be off by default? Because some are useful, but some you might think, actually, we don't need it. If so, turn it off, then the risk's eliminated. The next one is looking at their data retention and deletion protocols. So a big problem with data protection can be when companies use your data for a particular purpose, but they leave it lingering on their servers for as long as possible, and beyond the point where they actually need it to do any work. At Acuity, we're really quite strict with this. We make sure that we delete data as soon as we don't need it. No data is kept for longer than 24 hours, and we delete the majority once it's been uploaded. It's only longer files and larger files that we just keep to make sure that they've processed. We keep it for the minimum time. But there are some companies where you upload your data for some processing activity, and it's not automatically purged. It might sit on their servers for a year, it might sit on there indefinitely in the worst cases. So if you are uploading data, and that could be, an AI minuting piece of software that records the minutes of meetings, or it could be a system where you upload all of your policy documents and staff profiles for an analysis to be done through some kind of data analysis exercise. If the tool involves you putting data into it, you should really check the deletion protocols. How often do they keep it for? How often do they delete the data? Or is there a button you need to press to purge the data? I've used some tools which have been incredibly good, but they rely on the customer to press purge once they're finished with the data and they don't need it anymore, to say, thank you for your analysis, delete and go. Remember, if that data is sat on some server ran by a third party and the worst happens and they got hacked or something really bad happened where they had a data breach, in theory, your data could be exposed with it as well. Therefore, you want your third parties to keep data for the minimum amount of time that is needed. And my final fifth tip is to really assess the shadow IT risk. Now, a third-party app is nowadays very rarely an island. Usually new applications will brand themselves on how they single sign-on and integrate with other products and how they link with other services that you use to make themselves super easy to use and secure. Maybe it interfaces with your email system. Maybe it interfaces with your file storage system. Maybe it looks at your intranet or local SharePoint or Google site that you use as an organization to help make things run a bit more efficient. I don't know. It could integrate with anything. And even if it's a secure app, there is a risk. It is high risk if it's got permissions to do lots of things over a data set. Maybe it can read the entire company directory. Maybe it can read every email from everyone who installs it. When you activate an app, look at the permissions that it asks for. I mean, we use Google Workspace. And if you look when you add a new app, it'll, sometimes say, hey, grant me all these permissions. And actually, sometimes the app can work when you only grant 3 or 4 that you think are essential. And it's just being lazy when it's being designed and it makes a request for everything. And I go, no, I don't want you to see all my files, but I do want you to be able to see draft emails, because what you're designed to do is draft emails using some, cool formula. Maybe that's what the app's designed to do. It's not designed to do everything and access all my files and all my emails. So you can actually select particular scopes, and in your data protection impact assessment, you might say, actually, I only want it to do this and this for it to work. Or perhaps it only needs to actually read your email and basic details of the user using the application. That's the API call we make at Acuity for our single sign-on. We just check your email address, check your name. That's all we need, your name and email, just to check it's you to get into the application. We literally ask for nothing else in our API for single sign-on. So it's worth checking that when you do it. Okay, so they were my 5 top tips for carrying out a data protection impact assessment in 2026. They're not comprehensive, but they're things that I think that should really be at the front of our minds. That's to really begin it at the procurement stage. Don't wait until it's done. Make sure that you actually map out and do a bit of poking of where applications store data. Sometimes it might not line up neatly with their data processing agreement and policies, so it's worth checking this. Look if they're using AI and analytics. Look skeptically. Don't just turn off. Don't just get scared because it says it uses AI, but really check how they're using AI. Who are they phoning home to with that data? How's that data being used by the AI or the analytics tool? The next one was to look at really clear data retention and deletion rules, making sure the application keeps data for not a second longer than it needs to. That's worth checking as you purchase. And as well as that shadow IT risk, the risk that it's going to creep in and it's going to start to have permissions over people's accounts in ways that you don't want. Okay, well, that's all for today. I hope that's been a useful discussion. If you want to get in touch to discuss different things that you think are useful in data protection impact assessments, I would love to hear from you. My email address is, as always, on the website. If you want to email inquiries@acuity.education, glad to hear from you. And if you are struggling to carry out data protection impact assessment redactions, be sure to check out Acuity Auto Redact. You can just Google search Acuity Auto Redact, it'll be at the top. We offer an AI service which is really easy to do a data protection impact assessment in. We can help you with that very, very quickly. And we audit files, and when they come in, we redact them automatically. So our AI will automatically redact documents, but leave you in the driving seat. You get to decide what's unredacted. We can redact by personally identifiable information, by event. We can redact entire pages, sections. We make the redaction process super easy. So if you want to check us out, please do. Until then, looking forward to talking again next week, and this has been Data Protection Weekly.
Data Protection Weekly.